There's a study that I read in 2020, which had the 100 startups in Africa that had raised over $1 million. You'll be surprised how majority of those startups were all run by foreigners who are in Africa. I wouldn't blame anybody, but it's because the investors were comfortable investing into the Muzungu mostly because they understood the people who they were investing in.
Is there anything about AI and the other technologies that are coming that scares you?
All technologies can be used for good and bad.
You now run a company. You founded a company that's worth over $10 million. You must be very proud of yourself. I'm a young graduate from IPRC, right? I have a tech idea and I want to become the next Davis. What should I know? And more importantly, what should I avoid?
I'll start with one thing which is very important. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. In 20s, find people who inspire you, work hard for them and learn from them. He says in your 30s, now that's when now you have a little bit of wisdom. You're still not the brilliant bunch, but you have enough knowledge to break out and build something that you want to do.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal. You know this is the big league. Sanga mumihanda ya Kigali make a big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mte. Yutse nshimi mana kuva honda muchiye. If you want the long form, come close mrabule. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form. Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Davis Nteziryayo, founder and CEO of Huza, an HR fintech. A software engineer by training, the company Davis created in 2015 is today valued at over $10 million and operates all over Africa. In this episode, we discuss his personal journey from a small village to creating a multi-million-dollar company and the lessons he's learned, the future of Kigali's innovation scene, and the likelihood that a Rwandan will build a billion-dollar company. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to make a deal with you. About 69.5% of you who watched this very podcast haven't hit the subscribe button yet. So, here's the deal I want to make with you. If you hit that subscribe button today, I promise you that my team and I will keep making the show better and better in every single way. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button today. And now, let's get into the show. Davis.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Long Form.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think our conversation has been a long time coming. I've been trying to get you here for about a year now.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a question that I feel that you might be one of the best placed to answer. You, more than most people, understand what is brewing in places like Norrsken and other tech hubs that we find all over the country and in Kigali. What is the likelihood that in the next few years we'll actually see a Rwandan unicorn, a $1 billion tech company? Is there something that you see that's floating in our water that is bubbling under the surface?
No, definitely. So I think over the, I don't know how long, maybe it could be a decade, it could be even sooner than that. When you look at the tech landscape, particularly where the world has shifted, the introduction of the Norrskens and these other investors that are coming into the market, they're giving opportunities to young entrepreneurs. So if you go backwards, maybe 3 to 5 years back, any entrepreneur that was building something in Rwanda most of them depended on grant competitions and things like of that nature. Because you can't honestly build it's hard. It's doable, but it's hard. It's hard to build a unicorn without getting funding early enough. But now that's in terms of, because there's two things I think you have to think about is like what is the landscape looking like and what's the financial possibility of people getting funding. So if you look at our market and you say now today as a Rwandan tech company, you can it's a little easier. It's still harder than a guy in Silicon Valley, but it's a little easier to get some initial funding because the investors are around. But now let's also go to the tech world, right? So if you look at the tech world that we are in today, you look at the AI world that is coming up, you look at the blockchain technologies that are brewing as well. It's giving young generation, the next generation of Rwandans, ability to build solutions faster. Because that's the thing here is about doing it faster. Because you can do it a little faster, we're leveraging the existing technologies, and you're able to hit the market and get some funding that can help.
Let me ask you. So, first of all,
yes,
before we talk about, I guess, the possibility of having a $1 billion startup or $1 billion company in Rwanda, in Africa, do those exist already?
Yeah, we have quite a number. I think over the last couple of years, we've gotten a few unicorn startups that have come into tech. Most of them were in fintech, but majority of them came from Nigeria. Okay. So again, it was the bigger markets because again, those are the ones that had the potential of getting investors.
So is the problem investors or is it talent?
The problem is not talent.
So yes, we have the talent.
The talent is there, that is true. But the problem is investors and the market. Because until recently, there's a study that I read in 2020, which had the 100 startups in Africa that had raised over $1 million. You'll be surprised how majority of those startups were all run by foreigners who are in Africa. Those were the majority.
So Muzungu's coming to Africa to create African solutions for African problems.
There you go. Now, it's not, I wouldn't blame anybody, but it's because the investors were comfortable investing into the Muzungu mostly because they understood the people who they were investing in. And
so okay. So these guys come into our ecosystems, create solutions,
yes,
and then get pushed further because they have a white face. So, and the investors, the people with the capital are coming and saying, I see this white face and I'm okay with it.
I think, so for me, now this is personal. Personally, I believe that no matter who you are, we are all biased to some degree. I am comfortable with Sunny because I've known him for a minute. He knows friends who I know friends of. So that always plays a factor in no matter which way you slice it. We definitely have to be grateful as a continent that some of these Wazungu have come and actually built good technology companies. But the VC funding, this is not just even in Africa. This is across the globe. It goes to typically white male. We are lucky as Huza to have received funding from Google. Google has what's called Google Black Founders Fund. It was literally created to counter that because Google said that most of the capital goes to white male. So they created a fund for black founders and minority owners. So that's what they wanted to see. Can we give them, because when you have a very good business that is doing very well, people are going to look at you. But how do you even get to that position when you start looking good? You've been building the long form, how much do you able to grind those early stages where you can get that angel investment or something that can get
partnership.
You up. Exactly. That's where we are still backward in our case. Rwanda has done a good job. We have 250 startups. We have a few things that are playing around so that at least you allow these people with brilliant ideas to get a platform to even try it out to say, is it viable on the market? Because there's also one thing of saying, I want to build the long form, but is there the audience to consume what I want to give? So that early stage push is what has been lacking. It's improving. It's still not there. I think I'll give you again, this is more of a global statistic, but it's even worse for us. 90% of startups fail. So you're looking at 9 out of 10 startups fail. Why do they fail? Right? I don't know if you've looked at any of that, but why do they fail? It's just because those early years, and the ones who fail, most of them have even better products and better solutions than the ones that succeed.
Yes.
But they couldn't grind and long enough to.
They couldn't find money.
Money is the biggest.
Yes.
Burnout is number 2. So those are the 2 biggest ones. It's money and burning out.
If there's obviously what you do, Huza,
Yes.
what other ones do you think in this market that exists today, what other tech companies, startups, do you think will be more likely to become that magical Apple or Flutterwave or these guys who, because it's good, it's nice to be able to have a lot of companies that employ a lot of people.
Yes.
But I think for us to become the country that we want to become, or we need big fish. We cannot be a country full of little small fish. There needs to be a big fish that employs a ton of engineers and a lot of specialists in that field.
Yes.
Which ones, when you look at them that exist today, are you thinking, okay, these guys have a good idea? Other than yourself, of course.
I always think I have a good idea, but when I think about it, I don't know so many startups, but I know a few because I've been in part of the ecosystem for a minute. But I'll try not to point out one individual startup, but I think I can point out what space are they in. So, okay, I'll give you one example that I can think of. There's one called Pindo. Yes, these guys started in SMS space, and then now they have gone into some AI, some machine learning, particularly to help the farmers. So if you look at something that's like more of a revolutionary technology that you're building, so it's based on what I'm building for Rwanda. How easily because Rwanda, we are a small market, but we're also the most structured market. If you look at us, because the government is very proactive, policies are in place. So you're able to do a pilot, because you're not going to build a unicorn on the Rwandan market on its own. No, that's where we have to start by saying it's not possible.
Okay.
Because we are 14 million people. We are, again, because the financial muscle is not there. So if you're building a solution, are you building a good solution for the continent? What you pilot in Rwanda, once you can you go to an investor and say, I've done this very well. This is working fantastic. I need money for expansion. I'm going to enter into Tanzania. I'm going to enter into the entire East African market, which is almost 300 million people. So because that's the size that you have to be looking at. So the solution that you're building has to be basically transferable from one market to another. If you're looking at the ones you've mentioned, the ones that are in payment space, you're able to move from one country to another as long as your solution is good. So these guys are building something in agriculture. And that is a much underserved market. And agriculture is somewhat similar across the continent.
Yes.
So that I find that it's less about the startup, it's about what solution are they providing. Are you providing something that is needed across the continent, or at least in terms of one corner of the continent? Because even if you corner the East African market, that's still enough for you to get your unicorn status. But you cannot do it just as Rwanda alone. Yeah.
I guess in the 44 years I've lived, I've seen so many things. That we're about the same age, you and I. So if you think about the world that we were born into, we were born into the world of the USSR and the Cold War and Marxism. But in the world that we've lived, we've seen the demise of newspapers. People don't get their news from newspapers anymore. It's from Facebook and Twitter or X. We've seen the end of handwritten letters. You remember when we were still in secondary school and you'd get a letter from home. Right? They'd call you on the assembly and say, hey, you have this letter there's a letter for you. And you'd get excited. Okay, who has written to me? And then you'd write back. That doesn't exist anymore. You have WhatsApp and you have email. That's how you communicate. It's instantaneous. We've seen the death of pretty much television. Literally what we're doing, what this conversation that we're having, this podcast, this audio podcast that then goes to YouTube is cutting out the TV studios, right?
Yes.
So we're seeing the death of so many traditional things, traditional sectors that created jobs and gave a lot of people opportunities. So I'm going to ask you, Sunny, I'm more of not necessarily the victim of these changes, but the changes find me and I have to deal with them.
Yes.
I think for you might even see these changes, and you're in the tech space. You're sitting down with, all you techies, and you're looking at a research paper that is coming out of Princeton or something that's coming out of China, and you're making sense of it in a way that Sunny or normal people like me, we can't make sense of these things. I'd like to ask you, when you when you see what big changes are we looking at? What big changes should we expect in the future? Other than say AI, which I think has now become the language as we talk about AI, everything is AI. Other than AI and say perhaps blockchain.
Yes.
Right? What are the big changes of the future? What does the next 30 years probably look like for us with all the changes, all the technology? What other sectors will probably die?
So that's a tricky one. So let's start with this few things. I think evolution is inevitable, right? Because you either evolve or you die. That's the name of the game and the world we live in. If you're a newspaper company, you saw the internet coming, you either go online and start distributing your content to some degree. If you stay with your old-fashioned way without understanding that these changes are coming. So I think no one can see 30 years from now. I don't think even the brilliant minds we've ever seen on the planet can see that far, but you can say that changes are coming. I need to ride the wave, right? I need to ride the wave and see whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm providing, how do I incorporate these new pieces of technology that are coming in? So I can start by just talking about, it's always easier to look backward before you get to the forward side. Because if you look backward, the printing industry was heavily affected with the introduction of digital, right?
Yes.
Whether you're in newspapers or photocopying machines, companies that were creating pictures. You remember you said our olden days as old folks, they took a picture of you and you waited a month, some guy to get a film, go somewhere, process it.
There are literally people whose jobs were, they would come to our school, I remember, and they'll take your photo.
So that was our world, and they would come take a photo, go back home. You wait a couple of weeks, they come, because if you're in Kabale, where you were going to school, I was in Gisoro, they send this picture to Kampala, whatever nearest printing place is. They print it and bring it back. Sometimes they come and tell you, the film died because it was exposed to light. But now we're in a world of digital camera. You're taking instant pictures. The youngins can literally do multiple filters. I can't even figure out what they do. But I've seen my children alone showing me a thing or two on my phone. Now let's go forward, right? So you see those things were coming to early 2000s when the digital cameras were starting, smartphones were starting to add them, incorporate them. Cars today, it's already they have so many cameras on themselves. So you're looking at technology being incorporated into almost everything you do. If you buy a new car today, most of the new luxury cars, you can connect to it on your phone. You can set your temperature on your car. You can connect your phone to your GPS. You no longer need to actually see the GPS or buy. So there's companies that made billions of dollars on just GPS mapping.
Yes, for cars.
For cars. Now, if you use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, it automatically shows up on your screen. Your phone actually becomes what shows.
I was listening to an interview, and they were talking about the Chinese and how the Chinese leapfrogged the entire automobile industry. And they were saying that the Chinese automobile industry, the Chinese government understood that they could never compete with the legacy brands, the Toyotas, they couldn't.
Yeah.
So they decided that, okay, what are we good at doing? We have amazing phones. They're like, what we're going to do is create a car that is literally a phone on wheels. Someone said it's a mobile phone on wheels, right? So, with the battery and everything else, like fully.
So now on that front, right? Because we are going to the future, right? So if you look into the future, you're looking at the electric car industry. It's inevitable. That one you have no choice but to adapt to it, because the technology is cheaper to create. It's cheaper to maintain. It still has its challenges, right? Because you don't have enough charging stations. Charging takes a little longer. So those are things that over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be really improved, right? So once those are improved, now you need to build your future around those. So you're looking at the electric car industry. You're looking at, again, the way technologies are built. So today your phone has more power than a supercomputer that used to send a man to the moon in the 60s. Just the handset. And this was a computer the size of a whole room. So when you ask your question, like, how far do you see in the future? I think for me, the way I would answer it is, we need to look at the current trends of technology that are coming. Artificial intelligence is not coming yet to replace anyone. It's just coming yet to make life much easier.
You don't think so?
No, that's not. I mean, your computer these days asks you, are you a robot? You need to enable to make sure that you're not a robot. But because when you were going to college, when your parents were going to college, they read a manual paper, right? They had to go in the library and read through papers. Even when you and I were going to high school, same. A few years back, when you're writing papers, you would go to Google and do your research. You would use search engines. Today, you can ask ChatGPT, right?
To actually write your paper. So what does it do? It essentially just comes and looks at, you could go and search and spend hours reading multiple articles. It can read those, you can read 100 articles in 30 seconds and give you a summary. So how do we make sure that we leverage these technologies in almost everyday life that we do? If you're looking at the healthcare industry, how do we make sure, because ChatGPT can't replace a good doctor, but if doctors put enough information in an artificial intelligence, it means that when you ask that question, it can search 1 million doctors across the globe for the same exact symptom and give you the most possible scenario. So how do we, and that's where we have an advantage as a continent, particularly Africa and Rwanda in particular. We have, going to the example you just mentioned of China, we have an advantage of saying we don't need to build some of these things that these other countries had to build, from search engines to multiple data centers to get all this data. Now we can start leveraging their artificial intelligences. But don't you worry that, I mean, one of the things that I think the US learned, right? When we take a step back and kind of look at what happened as the result of COVID and even the Russia-Ukraine war, was that the US learned just how vulnerable its supply chains were to China, right? They literally, all their technology, their chips were coming from, they had outsourced it. So maybe and maybe it's a by the way, you're talking about us as Rwanda saying that, you know what, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can now just use these platforms, this AI, to do the work that we want to do. Sometimes I ask myself, if, God forbid, they cut us, you've seen what the US government has done. Like just recently, it has decided that, you know what, global trade, we don't want to support global trade. It's America first. I think there's a little bit of a risk in saying, in outsourcing a lot of the industries of the future, right? The AI, and saying, you know what, someone else will create this AI, and then for us, we will just benefit from the advantages it's given us. Don't you think there's a little bit of a risk there?
So, of course, there's a risk, but it can be done. You see, even before we go to the artificial intelligence, you can go to the way the technology is being built. One of the advantages of blockchain, and that's why I'm a big support, personally, I'm a big
So
advocate
before
for
you
it.
talk about, okay,
Yes.
first define that term. Like, a lot of people don't know what, we now know what AI is because of ChatGPT, but I think blockchain is still a bit confusing for most people.
So artificial intelligence and blockchain, basically, it's building decentralized systems, which means not one person is in full control. That's what it gives you. So there were technologies were built for the longest time, which we've always enjoyed. And I mean, that's the world I grew up building, is you're building centralized systems that are controlled by one individual. And the birth of cryptocurrency and blockchain, which was in 2008 after the US market collapsed, the financial market, it was to say that Sunny, as a bank, he has full control on his own customers and data, right? Davis as a bank has full control on my customers and data. Said, that's why we collapsed, because Sunny could do whatever he wanted. Some things were illegal and some things were legal. Now, when the blockchain came in, was most like, can we build a decentralized system? Sunny and Davis's system are combined together, but you only have access to yours and have access to mine. And you can, if you change anything in your system, I need to give you a permission to make the change. So essentially, you no longer own the technology just sitting on you. So the good application of blockchain was the Bitcoin, basically cryptocurrencies, which what gave it power was more people who mined the coin, give it more value. So it's not owned by one person. So you can't say that I own Bitcoin, I can make a change. No. If once you've released it to the market, everyone who has ever mined a Bitcoin, now has created, it's just a little bit technical. Basically, there's something they call consensus, which means for any change to happen, everyone who has a share has to accept. And it's done in the background. It's very quick. It's microseconds. But to the AI, artificial intelligence, and us relying on the foreign markets, people to control it, is over time, most of these technologies, the way they are built, even them, they no longer have full autonomy on them. So which means that as long as we are using the technology, we have some say in what is being done. But it wouldn't hurt also us building our own artificial intelligence over time. Because building artificial intelligence is not complicated. What's most complicated is training it to understand what people are doing. That's one of the biggest challenges in artificial intelligence, is it knowing that this is a cup that is written on the long form. Once you've told it that, once you've trained it and says, anytime you see this image that looks exactly like this, has these particular letters, that's what it means. The decision making is much faster. It works better than our brains because it's more dedicated.
Is there anyone in the tech space in Rwanda right now who is building artificial intelligence?
No, building, I don't think so. Building on artificial intelligence, I think there's a few people who are using them, and even as we are trying to play around with some artificial intelligence, leveraging what's there. Because that's, like I said, if you're looking at the future, you say, it's coming. That one is inevitable. How do you leverage it in your own industry? Because if you're in the farming space, how can artificial intelligence help in the farming space? And now when you look at the African market, like you pick Rwanda, the biggest used is a feature phone. So how do you now move ChatGPT to a voice recognition? Because the feature phone are using a 2G SIM card, how can you communicate with these servers? Because that's what you're trying to do. So if you're saying, that's what you have to be looking at, is like, I'm building for Africa, because using one of our most successful stories in Africa, in East Africa, specifically the mobile money space, you didn't need to go back and build a crazy banking infrastructure like South Africa or Europe. But you said everyone has a smartphone, their phone number can work as a mobile number, as an account number. So that's how you have to think about it, is like, how do we look at the technologies that are coming and we make them our own, basically make them serve our purpose. If Rwanda has 14 million people and we have more than somewhere around 8 million phones around the country, and majority of those are still feature phones they're not smartphones, how do we leverage the new technologies that are coming to reach that person who is using a feature phone?
Is there anything about AI and the other technologies that are coming that scares you?
It does, but this is more on, because you see, all good technologies can be used for good and bad. All technologies can be used for good and bad. We love the internet. We love social media. People get this. People are using them to scam other people, phishing. Of course, one of the biggest concerns is what's going to be your system being hacked because there's some people even today, but if you look 5 years from now, your children, my children, when they get to their 20s, they're going to be in a technology world that is fully technology. Like they cannot function without it. So the car will know when to, you can have your own coffee maker, know when to make your coffee for you because it has intelligence in it. Your car knows that the temperature is too high outside. I can cool the car down. By the time you come in, the temperature is there. Your beds, you've seen nowadays you have beds that actually are networked, fridges. So there's always that concern that what will happen when most of your decision making, you've actually left it to the machines.
Yes.
So that has to be a concern. What happens again when people start hacking people? You don't know how vulnerable you are. You enjoy using the technologies, but you did not put in the right measures to secure your technology. And someone hacks your information and they make your life miserable. So there's a lot of concern that one has to be mindful about. And of course, we come to the world also of data, because we are in a world where we are oversharing. You can know about someone's life just by trolling their social media. Now imagine someone who's doing bad information and he's using some artificial intelligence to search 1 million social media posts per minute so that he can target specific vulnerable people. So those concerns have to be there.
I guess now I'm going to make it a bit more personal to you.
Yes.
You have 2 young kids.
Yes.
Right? And you're saying that in the next 10 years or so, we'll be living in a fully AI world. You, more than others, probably see both the advantages and the disadvantages of this world that we are pretty much being marched into even by force.
Yes.
You see, no one came up and asked Sunny how I felt about AI. They just said, this is AI, deal with it. I would like to ask, as a father, how are you preparing your children for this future that you say is coming?
So as a father, that's a nightmare. I think you should also, because before you even get to the far future, you even start with the current. Today, there's so much content on social media, from YouTube. You give your child a smartphone, they are watching a cartoon of Tom and Jerry. And as before you know it, the algorithm in your YouTube is, because Davis was watching some other sports video before, son used this. So 4 people use the same phone to watch different things. And as soon as my daughter is watching something that is rightfully her age, it will still suggest things because it saw me watching many videos of the other content, right? So they can easily consume information that they shouldn't be seeing at their age. So you have to start by worrying even just on today. But it's inevitable. So what can you do? Start by, I think there's also something that are super important. So grassroots, with the way we grew up with our parents talking to children, you have to start. Well, our parents actually used the stick mostly. It worked well and can't work today. But you have to start by filtering content. If you're capable of doing it, do so. Put some filters. Of course, most of these applications, they also have parental controls and things that you can do to filter content. But you also, with your children, 3 hours in the evening when you come from work, they at school have more than 5 to 8 hours, and their friends might start bringing gadgets and things like that. There's very little control that you also have to accept that you have. Talk to them, educate them, set hard rules early enough so that they know what's wrong and what's right. But we are in a world where you can't control it.
No, because I have 2 kids as well. They're much younger than yours, and as a parent, you're trying to help them become not just a good kid, but good children, but rather useful members of society.
Yes.
Who are able to thrive. And sometimes I worry because I was taught the lessons of the last century.
Yes.
And I cannot teach what I don't know. Right? I cannot teach things. I can teach you, but I can't teach because I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. Right? I don't even know what risks. Before I could say, you could say that, you know what, don't do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
Right? But now, I can't even begin to imagine. Because if you think about, again, like I've literally said in our 44 years plus of existence, there's been revolutions.
Yes.
And it almost seems like the revolution age is, as we bring in more AI, everything will just double, triple, quadruple in speed. Right? You guys are sitting there cooking in Norrsken, I don't know, God knows what. You're 15,000 steps ahead. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even know, how do I prepare for this? What courses in school should I put my kids in? I'll give you an example of in Rwanda, it was like that challenge of saying, okay, I need my child to be bilingual. We were taught that, we need to be able to speak French, English, and obviously Kinyarwanda to be able to get a good chance in life. So when I got an opportunity, I wanted to put my son in a school where that they teach both languages.
Yes.
But then I'm asking myself, by the time he's 18 years old, will he even need to be able to speak? Will he need to know like je m'appelle, il s'appelle, or he'll think it, and there'll be a gadget that is made by inshallah some young man and young woman from Norrsken who's proudly Rwandan, that will immediately turn his thought into speech, where he'll walk into a place in Portugal, having never spoken Portuguese in his life, and the AI will translate his thoughts into Portuguese speech.
Yes.
And how am I even doing the right thing by teaching him languages or forcing him to do this? I just never know. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing for these boys that I have.
Yeah.
Is that something that you wrestle with?
I don't think there's a manual for parenthood, because I think if there was, it would be changing every day. Because again, it's hard to prepare for the future. You can only raise your children. Again, this is just my personal opinion. You can only raise your children based on your upbringing. You and I, we grew up in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s were our very early years, right? And our parents grew up in the 60s and 50s, right? So they instilled in us what they knew based on how they grew up. That's why the best way to punish you was lay down, give me a stick. You don't listen, you go to the neighbor also whoops you. It was allowed. These days you can't even look on the neighbor's child with a side eye. So we can only do what we believe we know. And we're going to be wrong more than we are right.
But is there something that you know that I don't know?
I don't think so.
Sure.
But I'm more curious in terms of technology. You also know a lot of things that I don't know. Because in my own domain of tech, which is mostly going to be like software, coding, and that world, that one I know a little more than you. But you're more informed than I am. You're more informed in the world of news, politics.
Yeah.
So when you look at all that I think from the technology side, I need to prepare my children for what's coming up, right?
Yes.
And I need to safeguard it to the best of my ability. So me, when I'm raising mine, I'll be more informed on the technology side of saying, okay, How do I lock the Wi-Fi at home so they can't access different things if they're in the house? How do I, so you look at all those things and you say, okay, how do I, but then when it comes to the education system, it's still designed by people who are better than us in the education space. And they're also using knowledge that they learned, not knowledge that they are going to learn. So maybe now a teacher is going to be able to catch your son when he writes a paper using ChatGPT completely, like he didn't write anything, right? So he didn't do any research. So even the education system, so all these systems that we have around, everything that we have has to slowly evolve to catch up and match the speed of the world. So we are the world is moving extremely fast. The rate of distributing information is probably 1 million times faster than it was 30 years ago. You had to wait for a newspaper. If a song was sung by Michael Jackson, you waited by the time it got to you in Kigali, it was how many years? But now it's released and you even know it before it's released.
Yes.
You get to
it has leaked.
Yeah. You know that I know a friend who was waiting for some Korean pop song. These guys sat like 2 hours before to wait for the song to be dropped at midnight on the dot. So we are in a world where things are moving very fast. And the only thing I think we can understand is, number one, is we need to use our own experiences to help the next generation, which is your children and even the young people that you speak to. That's number one. Number two is to understand that these changes are coming. How do we become part of the new changes? If I'm an owner of a gas station, I know time is going to come when most likely consumption of fuel is going to drop by 80% because there is more charging stations, right? So how do I invest into that infrastructure to some degree if I want to stay in that space? So you have to start thinking of saying like what trends are coming, because most of them don't normally just fall on us immediately. No, you can see them coming. Some people might get the information ahead of the others because they're in the industry. If you're in the automotive industry, you know it. Companies that were, these billion-dollar companies that were making a lot of money on the old combustion engines, over the last few years started going to hybrid. Now they've created line of strictly electric cars, partly for, of course, to get carbon credit and save money, but also because they know that people are going to start buying that type of vehicle. So if I want to stay relevant, I better do, otherwise I'll die a natural death. So I think when it comes to the technology, and we are looking at, again, this new technology that we know are hot, where everyone is excited, where all the investments are going. Even people are providing funding, are pushing so much money. Microsoft has invested a lot of, basically, I can't remember the exact number, but billions of dollars in ChatGPT before we could even touch it. Google has Google Gemini, which is an amazing one for research and things, right? Apple now has their own AI.
The Chinese have DeepSeek.
Chinese have DeepSeek, which is fantastic. X was recently acquired by XAI. So you're seeing that even those ones are starting to see like this is the world where the shift is going.
And Africans, is there an African AI yet?
Not yet. Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
So it probably doesn't exist as it stands
No, but
today.
I think there's this guy, this Zimbabwean, the owner.
Stripe Masiwa.
Yes, Masiwa. I think they're working on something, but they're still piggybacking on still US Intel for chipsets for that. So, but I would say us from the small level, what we need to do is just leverage what's there. Then over time, I think Africa is going to build its own artificial intelligence that we can start leveraging. But how do we get there? I think that's a question that's the $1 trillion question.
Yeah. We've talked about, and this is just me asking, right? It's, politics is always close to our surface in Africa. We live in the Great Lakes region, so right, so our lives are run by politics. It's war, conflict, this, that. It's maybe I'm just going to ask you as someone who's also lived in this region and lived in the uncertain times that we've gone through. How do you, when you see AI and all the things that are coming,
yes,
how do you think it will affect the way states govern themselves in our region? Will it be a good thing? Or might it even create even more conflict than already exists?
Politics is a space that I don't understand, but of course I grew up through it. Here and there you pick things. But done correctly, these new technologies will definitely improve the way we do things. That's if they're done correctly, right? But in most cases, politics will probably push back on introducing these new technologies into their space, because most of the technologies are there to make things efficient. And very few governments, African governments, even American government, by the way, even with Elon Musk and Trump, they are going there, are going to accept efficiency properly. Because if you think about it and you say, I would love to introduce an artificial intelligence in like all land registry or so whatever,
government procurement.
And you remove that, they're going to push. You're going to get fight. You're going to get pushback. We had a college professor. We had he was a very brilliant guy who used to teach us computer science.
Where?
In school at La Roche. And he told us that you guys who are in technology, when you go to sell your solution to someone, you should always ask your first question, why? Whose bread am I taking? Because typically the solution is coming to make things a bit faster, right? So if you're saying that politicians can use technology to move a bit quicker, operations of governments can also leverage these technologies, but they can also be used for bad, as I said, if done efficiently. So if you're looking at, let's say, the medical, like one of the most interesting, I think it was, I need to remember the country. There's a country in Latin America that was introducing medical on blockchain.
I think it was maybe Costa Rica.
I can't remember. If it comes to me, I'll tell you the name. But I'll find the article and share it with you. Now, do you know what that means? Right now, if you think about it, if you go to a hospital somewhere and they do tests, those tests are recorded somewhere. But if they can treat you, they say, we put a transfer for you to go to the next hospital, bigger hospital. When you go there, they need to get the records pulled. They need to reinterpret these records. And through that chain, information is lost, information is translated differently. But when that country was going to do it, for number one, means that since the whole entire health system, everyone's going to have the same exact record. So even if it's done in Musanze, the person at King Faisal, when you go there and you say, this is my ID, basically they get the right authorization, they'll see exactly what was written and done by that person. And it's done one that will never change. Even 2 decades from now, you can go back to the same exact record because it can never be altered. You can create a new record, but you can never change the old record. So that's why I say these things can be done to improve the efficiency of what we do. But also governments also have ways they've been operating for centuries and for decades. Politicians. So, but as different generations go into power, because they're used to those type of technologies, they're going to come along with what they know. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but you will find when the next generation, if you get the 20-year-old today, who might be a minister or a head of state 20 years from now, he will be coming from a world of sending email, not printing a paper.
Yes.
But my uncle, our parents today, for them, they still prefer a hard copy. So I think we can leverage these technologies. Luckily, I've even 2 weeks ago, we had a global AI summit here in Rwanda, which was heavily sponsored by the government, everything to make sure that we are there. We don't lose out on these things that are coming. But how do we apply them? That's where the human factor comes in.
Yeah, no, personally, as you said rightly, I'm in the communication space.
Yes.
And what I'm now seeing when it comes to the ability of AI to generate an image and a voice, it scares me because they can as human beings, we used to believe our reality was based off of what we saw and what we heard. And I worry about the intersection of AI and politics. Because yes, you're right. It can come and create efficiency. It can create, blockchain can come and improve the way we do medicine.
Yes.
But on the other side, it can create images that don't really exist. It can come and say that, you know what, Davis, there's an image of Davis that is going viral. He said this.
Yes.
You didn't actually say it, but it was created. And me as Sunny, I can't tell anymore. How do we, isn't that something like that I always wonder about, there's a movie, I think, I think you probably watched it as well, Terminator.
Oh, yes.
Right? Remember?
Yes.
And they were talking about, there was this scientist who created a chip. And that chip finally became the robots that then killed humanity. And sometimes I think to myself, these guys sitting in these labs and these coders who are just looking at it through a sense of this is a science, I'm creating a solution that is going to be amazing, it's going to create money and value. And sometimes I wonder, do you, when you guys are cooking things, do you ever think, let me hold on.
Yes.
Let me hold on this idea because it might be a good idea, but if I follow it to its full, the full path of it, it can really create problems. Do you ever I don't know whether you guys sit down as, the smart kids and start thinking, what are we really creating out here?
Yeah. So,
do you ever think of those things? Maybe that's...
You do to some degree. I mean, there's no fraternity of geeks. Probably there's groups where some geeks are cooking something, but you have guys like Elon Musk that are doing amazing stuff. And but for me, I believe that when you're building something, in most cases, particularly a piece of technology, if it becomes very successful, it goes beyond what you ever dreamt of. You get the point? Because when you are doing, so let's say someone is building the mobile network. I don't think any of them ever thought that it's going to turn into a bank at some point, right? I was saying I want people to call each other. Then someone else came and piggybacked on just the calling, right? And started messaging.
Yes.
Then someone else came and said, I know I can build a handset that actually does interconnect it to the internet so that now I have a computer and calling in the same thing. So many people build on top of other things. So we all ride on shoulders of giants. That's just a reality of the world we live in, because someone's going to do something and someone else says, oh, this works. Good, there's a gap here. So when you see the gap as an entrepreneur, you can say, I'm going to build a solution to fill this gap. And sometimes you've not thought beyond how far that will go, right? And now when you say, so you're the first guy who goes and says, I'm going to build a smartphone, right? So someone started with the dial phone. Remember the old phones that we had? Those ones that you had long time ago, those ones you can't show them to your children unless you put them in a museum. Then someone came with a cordless phone. Then someone came with a smartphone that you can charge and keep for a while. So all these technologies, there's a way they work hand in hand. But when you're building, I don't think you're going to sit out and be like the way the Terminator was. Because even in Terminator, they didn't know. They just realized it when they got in the future and they had to send someone back in the past to try and kill the original, initially to try and kill what was built. So you build something because you believe you're solving a problem. And you normally look on the good side. It's like, I'm building a solution. I am building a social networking website, a social networking application that can allow people to share information. You can share about your events, about your day, about your feelings, and about those things. But then later someone says, you know what, we can use it for XXX, something more adult-like. Someone builds off of that, right? And then some people have even chosen it as a career. I don't think the people who initially said were like, why are you getting influencers? Because now today there's people what's your job? I'm an influencer. What do you really do? I'm a YouTube influencer. I'm a Snapchat influencer. So you build these things, but I don't think the Snapchat guys or the social media people, when they were building the best application for social media, they were focused on, can we allow people to become influencers, make a career out of it? They were like, can we build the best application that can allow you to share information instantly, easier, more collaborative, let more people get involved into this sharing of information? That's what you really wanted to build as a technology enthusiast. That's what you really want to do. So if you're building, we are building Huza. First, we are building, how do we build a way for people to manage their workforce, understand people who work for you. That's what you're focused on. And then we do workplace banking. How do you make sure that people can access their money easily, right? So those are things that you're focused on. But later, someone might start using the system for money laundering. You cannot know. Yeah, someone might come up with a creative way of doing things that you can't think of. And we live in a world with brilliant minds that are going to look at something and be like, you know what, Sunny started the long form, but he didn't think about this. And he puts a spin on it and sells it as the next thing. And it works. Today, I'll end on this one. I think when I was learning Snapchat, and you're already on Twitter and Snapchat, you're figuring those two, then there's Telegram, then there's I think there's TikTok now for kids. Like, you can't keep up. Someone comes up with another version of something that's a little better. So you can't, it's tough.
Let's talk about, you mentioned Huza, the company you founded on another name. It was called Pes Choice. It started. It was, it's been about 10 years.
We started in 2015, 2016.
So it's been 10 years.
Yes.
But in less than 10 years, you, a village boy from southwestern Uganda, who was born there in a very normal family, right? Probably a little bit of trade and largely agriculture. You now run a company. You founded a company that's worth over $10 million, right? When you look back at your journey, right, to the person you become today, the teams you've led, the value you've created, you must be very proud of yourself.
Once in a while, I sit and appreciate where I've reached. There's long ways to go, but I did not set out to build a large company. That's the thing. As I grew up with 9 brothers and sisters in a large family. We have a large family. We are fantastic. We are a big bunch.
10 of you?
9 of us.
9 kids?
Yes, 9 kids, yeah. But we grew up a dozen and up, because we had cousins who grew up with us as well at home. And as you grow into your life, that's why I always find it easier looking backward. But one thing that I personally hate is regret. Like, what opportunities did you give up to even get here? What could you have done better? It's good to understand it, but in many cases, when you made those decisions back then, you didn't have the information. So you worked on the information that you had. So growing up, I would have never thought that would be in technology. That's a world that did not exist in Kisoro.
Yes.
Because you're born and you start growing up in the village. There's no electricity. We didn't have a TV. You never had a television at home. We had in our town, we had a little TV, I think probably like a 24-inch. I don't know the size of the screen, but we used to go there to watch movies. When the guy had a generator, I would turn on the generator and you just go watch movies.
And pay like 50 shillings.
Less than that back then. Now you see that I'm sounding too old. So you just go there to watch, right? Then after 94, we moved to Rwanda. Now there you could go pay 30 30 francs in CV just to go watch a movie. Now here there was internet, so you start seeing. That's when I saw Tamak Road when I went to Kabale to go to boarding school. So you start seeing these other advancements that are there. Now, so those are things that you cannot see the future further out. In many cases, you do the best you can where you are. And then after you do it, it leads you to the next step. And
you are a software engineer,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You've said something that's interesting, which is you were born in a place with no electricity, and you'd walk to town to watch a movie on a generator.
Yes.
Every child has a dream, right? When you're starting school, you're thinking, I'm going to be this, right? Right now, we know who you've become.
Yes.
When you were going through school, who did you think you'd become?
So it was always, so I think this goes to almost everyone. Your hero is usually the guy you know. Now, if you're in Kisoro and the guy you know is normally the veterinary doctor, the priest.
So you want to be a priest or?
No, but my brothers, see, I'm number 6 in line. So my brothers were always doing bigger things. So I always aspired to be who they were. Like the ones I followed, I'm still like, how can I be as good as those guys? Because they were cooler. We lived in Kisoro, but they went to school in good schools and they would come home for the holidays.
With stories.
And, they were well dressed and my neighbor kid that we played around. So you always aspired to be those. But we had, I wanted to become an architect. That's what I really wanted. We had, there's a guy, one of the most successful guys we had back then. He would come with very nice cars and his family for the holidays. And they would say how amazing he was. And I wanted to become an architect because I knew that was probably the biggest success one can have. Then, of course, you go to secondary school. Now you start meeting people who even have other aspirations, and now you start piggybacking off of your friends. But I've always been, and also you need to remember that you and I grew up in a generation where our parents told us you're either lawyer, doctor, engineer. Anything out of that?
I remember I wanted to, when I finished senior 6,
yes,
I wanted to do journalism.
Oh.
Yeah. And they said, no. Go and do law.
That was a world that we grew up in. So my parents, I knew that they told us, even my uncles, they told us that you have to be the smart people. You have to show that you're smart by doing sciences. So you knew that anything beyond that,
you're not smart.
You're not smart enough, right? And I have an amazing uncle who took care of me because I became an orphan at a very young age. He was a deputy headmaster. Then he later became a headmaster in Kigali. And he would beat knowledge into your head essentially if he has to. But he said, you cannot do anything but sciences. So I've always known that I need to go the science route. And the more I grew, architecture became more my thing. It was like engineering. I had another uncle who was a civil engineer. He was doing good things as well. So I was like, okay, these are the people that you aspire to be. And our third born, he was also hell-bent on being an architect. He's now an architect.
Okay. Fantastic.
And in between me and him, there's like 6 years. So I always wanted to be, how do I become better than that dude? So essentially engineering is what it was. But then I was lucky that the Rwandan government gave me a scholarship and then they decided for me. They did not give me an option.
So so you moved, how was it? Because you've said that you did your secondary in Uganda.
Yes.
How did you end up getting a scholarship from the government of Rwanda? And when was that?
You essentially had basically 1994 to 2000, early 2000s. That was a wave where there was scholarships going around. And so I came and participated in a test. I'd done my senior 6 in Uganda. Luckily, I was also admitted I was going to go there and study. Then I participated here as well. And there was a scholarship. And so it was a no-brainer where I was going to go. When they said the scholarship to America, I was like, hey, why not?
What university?
La Roche University.
You're part of the La Roche kids.
I was part of the La Roche crew. So it was a group of us. So they essentially looked at the best grades that you had and they put us mostly in sciences, mostly engineering. It was engineering, IT, and some people were in finance. and business.
And was that scholarship the end of your architecture dream?
Not yet. So I still had the dream, and I thought I was smart enough to outsmart my country. When we go to school,
So you went there for?
went for computer science.
Okay.
They took us for engineering, right?
Okay.
And at school, I tried to do, because we were going to La Roche University, and when we had Carnegie Mellon, which was sister universities. And Carnegie Mellon had one of the best structural engineering programs in the world. They still have. So I tried to take as many classes as I could there so that I become a structural engineer. And my advisor later told me, you have to stick with your program. And so that's when he said, okay, continue with in your engineering world, but you cannot do structural engineering because we didn't have it at La Roche. You would have to from second year, from mid-second year, you'd have to go to Carnegie Mellon if you're going to do it. And my scholarship was at La Roche, even though we shared classes, some engineering classes. So I ended up doing 2 degrees, mathematics and engineering software. So because I had accumulated a lot of math classes in the first year and a half, I accumulated too many classes in mathematics, hoping to stay in the engineering space.
But you didn't.
I didn't. But looking backwards, the best choice would I love software more than anything. I think it's over the years, and I've seen it the way it shapes the world. We have a huge influence on things the way the world are done. But I still love buildings, but now as a hobby.
When you graduated, did you come back to Rwanda immediately?
No. We graduated. I started a postgraduate.
What year?
2004. I started postgraduate, and in my postgraduate, I was doing systems engineering at the time, and the company came to school and offered us jobs for us to go do software testing. I immediately left. My mom was extremely disappointed in me. I think
because
that's
you didn't finish school.
No, because now she was happy that in her head, if I had done a PhD, it would even be better. Because now she has a doctor with a doctorate. But I told, because they came and offered me a job. The money was really good at the age. I mean, I was in my 20s. They offered a job. They were going to help us with
How
paperwork.
much money was it? Do you remember?
I remember. No, at the time, so starting salary for an engineer was around $30,000.
Per what?
Per year. So your take home was around 2,600, but this is 2,000. You could fill up your car on $15.
And remember,
gas.
And I guess the context is that, again, you're a boy from Kisoro.
Yeah. So,
and then all of a sudden, you're pretty much living the American dream. I 100% understand. I would have done the same. I would have...
I made a promise to my mom and my uncle. He lives here. He also took care of me, that I'll finish my postgraduate.
Did you finish it?
I did. I finished it much, much later. 2011, I think 2012 is when I finished. I went back for 2 years and finished it. But so it was a good offer, and the experience that I was going to get, of course, I also knew. The other thing that the reality of it is, we don't come from wealth, most of us, our generation, we don't really come from wealth. So if you get any good opportunity to advance your career, I talk to my team today is full, the average age in the office is around 25. One of you and I have a common friend who, they interviewed and she said, so they said, how old is people at Pes Choice? She's like, so we are young, but our CEO raises the average, which was it was so much fun. But so when you get those opportunities, you jump on them. But what I tell the team today is number one is knowledge. Learn as much as you can.
Money will come.
Yeah, money will come. If you never leave money on the table. If there's money on the table, don't leave it on. But if there's an option between money and knowledge, take knowledge any day. Because knowledge will give you money at some point. So I always tell them, particularly if you've picked your track of where do I want to go as a young person who's graduating out of college, I want to be one of the best engineers, then pick an environment that is going to form you, that is going to stress you and work you hard enough to become the best version of you. You can go and get another job in a very comfortable company, but the question is 3 years from today, are you the best engineer or did you stagnate at a certain level? So but from at the time, the money looked good. I went for the money.
And so you started working in that company?
Yes. I mean, I started working in college.
Yes.
As soon as I go to America,
Yes.
I think in our first year, we started working.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing these odd jobs here and there, but make sure you keep your grades because our scholarship was very strict when it comes to grades.
Yes. What I want to understand, right? Because you've graduated, you've started working at this engineering firm.
Yes.
How does it happen that in 2015 you start your company, right? What is it? Was it a by the way? Was it something that you had planned? Was it like was there like a strategic master plan that, you know what, I'm going to work in this space for X amount of years, and then maybe get the earnings that I've made, and then strike out on my own, or did it just happen?
Man, I wish I was smart like that to plan my future. No. Being an entrepreneur, basically starting a company, that one was more random than anything. But in my college years, I met a beautiful girl who I eventually married, which was a good thing. So I married my college sweetheart. And between her and I, we used to have those conversations. We were kind of best friends. We were actually best friends, and we had a few other friends. So we'd have this conversation about legacy. What do you really leave when you go? Or what do you pass on to your families, to your children? And I've always been a student of life. Even though I wasn't thinking about being an entrepreneur, I've always been a student of life, of saying, I've always admired particularly the Asian Americans. These guys will start with a small bodega, and by the time you know it, it's a small shop that might pass through 3 generations. It might not be much, but it actually is transferred from one family to another. It could be a restaurant. That you find this restaurant was started in 1930s, and you're now here in the 2000s, and it's now there's a 3rd generation. So I always wondered, like, how did this work? And that's not something that we've had in our African context. Our parents struggled so hard to give us what they could give us. But then we needed to go out and work harder to also get something for ourselves that we can move on to the next one. So I always had that curiosity of learning, like, how do these things work? But then so through that, I had a very good career in engineering. I worked for different Fortune 500 companies, but that was my career.
And you're comfortable.
Yeah, and I was very well compensated. I cannot complain. I was well compensated. I gave them my hours. I gave them my life, my sweat and blood. They compensated me handsomely, and I lived a decent life with my family.
Living the American dream.
Yeah, I was living, exactly. You're living you're guaranteed a paycheck every 2 weeks. You're guaranteed a paycheck at the end of the month. You're able to pay your rent. You can pay your bills. You have a little bit left over. You're able to do some things extra. So that was a very comfortable life as an engineer. And engineers are paid very well in the US. Now, but when it came to, again, that curious of saying, is there something I can do? And then I started also thinking of how can I do that I can actually take home? Because I've always said I have to go home at the end of the day.
Why?
I could never see my entire life, even retirement, in the US now. I lived there 18 years. I loved my 18 years. I cannot complain. Even then, I think I overstayed in my opinion. But again, I never planned all these things out. It was more of, you had a good job, you love your job, you love what you do. I worked with Dish Network. That's one of the biggest corporations on the planet. Then I consulted with Accenture. Then went to, you go through this company that you're working with, and you're doing, and it's a machine. Every day, you know what you're supposed to do. You get paid for that. But I always wondered, what can I do that I can actually take home? And the more I analyze technologies, I also started saying, what am I strong at, right? Because as you said, these worlds are a bit ahead of us in terms of technology. What can I build for Africa? What can I build for home? What can I build for Rwanda? So 2015, actually started around 2012, 2013, we used to use scratch cards to call home. So you would buy a card at the gas station and you scratch it. It has a number, it would have a number, you call a number, you enter the PIN, and then tells you have $5. Then you enter the number to Rwanda. You call home. So that's the first business that I actually created myself. So my wife and I, the time was girlfriend, we started a small company called Kivutel. And Kivutel was digitizing the calling. So that was the first one I created. And 2015, 2016 is when Pes Choice was born, because now I had a few clients. I think we had over 10,000 people using our calling services. It wasn't a buy. It actually had some decent income, and we're doing a lot of minutes because first the revenue was based on the minutes people are calling. People are calling a lot. So a friend of mine who went to school together, my classmate, was building something with his roommate. His roommate was a presidential scholar in Oklahoma. The both of them are in Oklahoma. They're building something. I was in the same area. So his name is Odilon and Pacific Mahoro. So they're two Rwandans. So my cousin, Aline, tells me, oh, you know what you're building? Because I was evolving from calling to now, because my clients are still saying, can we even do things for our families beyond just calling them? So I was looking at, can you pay bills at home? Can you send money at home?
And this is 2014.
2014, yeah. So I was thinking, that's where my thinking was. And then these guys were building something similar. So that's how we started Pes Choice together. So the three of us said, okay, let's combine our efforts. Now we're three engineers who are all good in tech, but we didn't understand business. Like Sunny's, that exciting moment. You're talking about different things. Like, oh, Sunny, I can send Sunny a birthday gift when I'm in America because he's my boy. I just call him, hey, go to Chomad or go to this restaurant and eat. I'm gonna pay directly, right? And I can. So we're doing creative things that we're trying to think of, and that was the birth of our company. But prior to that, we had built a good piece of technology. So we tried different things until 2019 when we pivoted where we are today. Today, in whatever you're doing today, I saw how much work you guys were doing just to prepare for the podcast. Now, same thing goes to building a company. So you have to think through multiple things of saying, okay, Rwanda, number one, for me, of course, being home, that's why I say the emotional aspect is it's home. It's my country. I'm going to be home. But also the solution that I was building, it has to, because you're going to spend more time failing than succeeding when you're building something. You need to find something that you're comfortable with and that extra push every day to wake up and try again and continue trying where you fail. So Rwanda, being home, that's the emotional aspect, but also being a very good managed country with policies and government support, particularly for the fintech space that we were in, made it super easier. Because the only choices I had in my head was Rwanda or Kenya. Because Kenya had no laws against startups, particularly in the fintech space. If you went to Uganda or the other markets, you were paying a couple $100,000 just for licensing alone. You don't have that type of money. Rwanda, you knew that the government was working on sandboxes. They're willing to hear you out and let you test your technology, because you need to first test that technology before you can expand it into market. So, but what I had to look at was, if I go home, particularly, and I build a solution, because we had already started and we were building it for Africa, I said, if we go home and try this out, is that the best way to go at it? You look at a few factors. You can get cheaper labor, because as soon as you start building, even though we're 3 engineers, you know it's going to get out of hand. You can no longer sustain the technology just on 3 people. You have to hire more engineers. You have to hire people to do things. So those aspects had a play in. And it also as you build any solution that you're building, you also need to think of other things, of the intangibles that are necessary to make your life a little easier. There's a reason there's that cliche that has always been, you start in a garage. And that cliche it's actually not wrong. It's just that Davis and Sunny could not afford to get rent in Kigali Heights, so they went in the garage. Get the point? And that's why they could work for 20 hours.
Rwanda is your garage.
Yeah. So you need to go where you're comfortable. You need to look at those things, because as I told you, you're going to fail a lot more than you succeed. Even after you raise capital, you raise capital when you're doing all these finance people, all these numbers are going to be saying, you're going to have money for 24 months. Media is going to be excited. They're going to write about this company that has raised millions of dollars. And you're going to run out of that money quickly. It's not going to be enough to get you where you need to be, because all the vision, and as soon as you get that money, you're also going to get investors pressuring because they expect what you've promised. You've made commitments, you need to deliver. So all those aspects, you should put them in place and saying, Rwanda is a market that so that's why, start with the market you can understand better.
I like to get some insight into the nitty-gritty of the tech world that you're in. I'm going to create a scenario for you. I'm a young graduate from IPRC, right? I have a tech idea and I want to become the next Davis, right? They've listened to this podcast. They're like, he's not and I'm referring to you. They're looking at you and saying, okay, he's not an alien. He's done this. I want to be the next guy like him. So if I am that student, if I'm that graduate, I have the tech idea and I want to say, okay, what next? I have to ask you, what next? Where do I get, for example, you've talked about money. Where do I get funding? What is the right path? How should I navigate, from stage A to stage B, stage C, and onwards? What should I know? And more importantly, what should I avoid?
Okay, so this is interesting. Now, if you look at, I'll start with one thing which is very important. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Because earlier in our conversation, we said 9 out of 10 fail. So you need to be one of the ones that succeed. Because you see Sunny doing it or Davis doing it or someone else doing it doesn't mean that's your path. There's nothing wrong with good old employment and success, and you'll be very successful. So I'll start with that disclaimer of saying, if you have a brilliant idea, you also know that as brilliant as the idea is, the journey to make it a reality is harder than anyone expects. Now, what does that mean for that young person coming out of college? Jack Ma actually put it well. I'll actually use Jack Ma's words. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, said, in your 20s, get a job. Now we're going to by the law of averages. We're not saying there's so unique people who can even finish at 17 can make it work. But let's go by the average Rwandan, the average human being, the average African. In 20s, find people who inspire you. Work hard for them and learn from them. He says in your 30s, now that's when now you have a little bit of wisdom. You're still not the brilliant bunch, but you have enough knowledge to break out and build something that you want to do. In your 40s, that thing should have been successful, because whatever you're building, you should always build it for the future, not for the. You can build it for the current, but it has to serve the future, because that's who you're working for. Because whatever you and I are working on today, if you're looking at the long form, this is a very good example of what you're doing is you're not building the long form for today. You're building the long form for tomorrow, because tomorrow people have more access to internet. You get more viewers. You get, you reach bigger audience. All those things that are coming in place. Today it serves us, but it's going to get bigger tomorrow. So what you tell them is, number one is everyone has their own path. I became an entrepreneur in my mid-30s. And by virtue of any book or any ways, I'm not a conventional entrepreneur, because at that time I had a lot to lose. I had gotten to used a certain lifestyle as a well-paid engineer. I had a wife. I had 2 children. So I was risking everything to go and build something that I believe will work. If it crashes, I am out on the streets with my wife and children. If it succeeds, then everyone is going to say, well done. That's why if you do it earlier, then you have something, again, you have less risk. So I'm not a conventional entrepreneur. I've tried a few things, but I fully committed to entrepreneurship later in my career. I already had over a decade of work experience. That gave me something. I had a little bit of savings, which eventually you run through quickly. That's a given. I had a bit of experience. I was working on other people's budgets, so it means that I was never constrained by money. My job was to make sure that I work on things that function. So when you're talking to this young person, tell me, now you have to carve out your own path. But the most important thing you need to understand is it's going to take you about a decade for you to become properly relevant. And how do you get to that? It doesn't mean that you can still make money during the period, but when people start seeing your actual results, it's 5 to 10 years, it's 20,000 failures. You've literally crashed and reborn, and as a company, you came back to life. You've pivoted from one product to another. So what I have to tell them, because you have to give them the reality of what they have to deal with, is now I go to what's available today, because what was available to me 5 years ago and what's available to me today is different. 3 years ago, you couldn't get even a grant. There were several grants, most of it is going to agriculture and different industries. Now you have, within Norrsken, there's already about 3 organizations that are helping idea stage. See, in a typical tech world, if we use Silicon Valley as an example, or Sweden, you come up with the idea and someone is able to bank you so that you can make that idea into a reality where you get to a product or service that is sellable. Because you need different levels of funding at those early stages to get to a point where you can get real funding, like big money, the one that you normally see in the papers. How do I get the first 5,000 francs? How do I get the first 10 million francs to even pay for the server that I'm going to host my application on? Or even be able to take a trip to Nyabihu to do a survey with farmers, if a solution I'm building is for that. So how do I get those little money to start? Again, most of us are not coming from a background where your dad can give you the money or your uncle can give you the money. We're not coming from that background, but there's a few areas that you can go to. Jasir is one of them that we have. It's in Norrsken. They normally pay people at idea stage. They'll give you somewhere around $5,000 to $10,000, I think, to get people going. We have Plus 250 startup, which also is helping people again shape that idea that you're working on, and not only shape it, but also give you a little bit of financial support until you get to the level where you can actually go to a proper investor and say, okay, this is what I have. Because when you get there, you're not going to tell them, this is what I have, this is where I need you to come in, and with your money, I'm able to get to this next step. So the good thing is also today, social media is also another great tool. So use the tools around you. You don't have to go the route of Steve Jobs. He had his battles and his ways, but he worked within what he was given. Every decade, every era, you have what you're working on. Go by what you have. You're in a world of social media. You're in a world of artificial intelligence. How can you leverage? Go ask ChatGPT. How many grants are in Rwanda for this? It will just give you a bunch of articles. Read a few of them. Apply, get rejected. More that you get rejected, more than you get accepted. But that's the thing that you have to do. So there's different tools today that we have that are available to get you started. But the other reality that I cannot go without telling you is, even when you get to the later stages, you're still going to get pushed back. Whatever you're building for Rwanda, make sure that if you're going to go, because if you're building something, decide, do I want to use someone else's money, or going to bootstrap until it becomes profitable? Either route works for you. Either route works. If you use investor funding, you need to show them how they're going to make 1,000 times what they've given you.
1,000 times.
Most investors, they are greedy. That's why they are backing on you. Remember, investors invest in 10 companies. They need one to succeed. because they know not all of them are going to succeed. That one that succeeds should be able to cover
all their losses.
All the losses. That's why they want the money. So if you're looking for an investor, you're going for VC funding, you got to show them how you're going. They want to hear, how do you become a unicorn? But you don't always have to become a unicorn. You can become a very successful multi-million-dollar company, and it's operational in East Africa, or even just in Rwanda alone, and you're doing a good job, and you're profitable, but you didn't take external funding. So if you go the external funding route, now you know what is going to come with that is they want you in Nairobi, they want you in Lagos, they want you in Accra, they want you in Cairo. They want to see how do you get to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million users? That's what I want to hear. But you can also say, I'm going to go a simple route. I'll take a little money to get me going. Once I build traction, I'm going to build a successful business that is not going to make a lot of media news, but there's many organizations that are making, $5-10 million monthly revenues. In
this country?
In Rwanda, I don't know, but in Africa, there's a few that I know. In Rwanda, there's a few that are making definitely over a couple million a year in tech, and they're comfortable. And it's profitable.
That's pretty good.
And it's really profitable.
Yes.
Yeah, but then you also have the other company that you're hearing in the news that have raised $200 million, but these guys are not profitable at all. Because all of it has to come to fund the growth of the company. So all of it has to be coming, and you basically, even though they have 1,000 employees, their payroll is burning through everything, all the revenues they're showing. They're showing growth, but they cannot maintain their own without external funding. So you have to choose which one.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
And this is, I enjoyed to talk about specifics, but I also like to really talk about the country as a whole.
Yeah.
Now, there's almost 2 Rwandas that exist in this single nation that we call our own.
Yes.
You go to, for example, Norrsken that we're talking about, right? And there'll be young people living fully in the 21st AI century, right? They're talking about Bitcoin, they're talking about the Internet of Things. That's literally in Kiyovu.
Yes.
You can drive 1 hour south of where Norrsken is, and you go into the deepest village where they're living almost pre-industrial, where they can't even, unfortunately, have access to clean drinking water. I'd like to ask you, if you had a chance to try to bridge these 2 worlds, the Rwanda we sometimes are and the Rwanda we want, how would you go about it?
Good one. That's a good question for the politicians.
Yes.
It's a good question for the politicians, but I'll answer it from the technology aspect,
please.
Right? So one of the most valuable things on this planet is information. And that's where I think the gap can be bridged is if I am someone deep in remote area of Rwanda, how can I also know what's happening around the country? And information is so powerful that even knowing the weather, planting, again, there's certain information that I might not be, Bitcoin is not something that can help me as someone there because I have different problems, right? When we spoke about childhood, is like you are going to school in Kigali, you cannot think like the kid who is in Los Angeles. You can't because you have different realities. So the reality of the person in the remote area, his main concern as whether it's an adult doing something is going to be mostly agriculture system. How do we make sure we get that clean water? How do we make sure that we can actually grow our crops and sell them at a higher price? So now the question becomes for us on the technology side, that's why you see a lot of these companies that are building logistics platforms. And those are huge as well. If you say, if by the time you and I buy a kilo of potatoes at the supermarket at 800 francs a kilo. I think that's the price. I don't remember the price. Someone sold it at about 150. But if he had the information that actually what I'm giving, someone's going to sell it 4 times the price. He might stand his ground and increase his price by an extra 25%. And to them, that's, again, it's a big
No,
bump.
it changes their lives.
It changes their lives. That's a huge gap, Just so, how can we make sure that the infrastructure that the government is building is able to reach most of the corners? We will distribute information, then the people will pick what is important to them. For you and I, we'll talk about artificial intelligence because that works for us today. But a farmer in Rusizi is going to be mostly interested in how do I farm better. So if he can get enough information to know that I can rotate my crops in the garden or whatever, I don't understand agriculture enough, like to say, I can do this to optimize my produce, then that would be important for them. That's why I say that these technologies that are coming up is how do we leverage them to do those things? Because if you think about it, your child and my child, when they go to search online in the next 5, even today, they're going to search an interesting cartoon to them. But a child in Musanze can't even search for a cartoon because he doesn't even know there's a cartoon. So he's going to search for what is relevant to them. So the world is our oyster today. There's enough information, but how do we make it such that everyone has access, then they will choose what is relevant to them because they will search. So if you look at most of your history, search on your phone, on your computer, on everything, it's going to be related to the world you're in, which is media world. If you go online, you find, again, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. How do you write this code? How do you compress these files or whatever? So everyone will always pick. I think what we can do as a country and as a continent is we need to build enough infrastructure so that, because the next big entrepreneur in Rwanda, we're not talking about unicorn, we're talking about successful entrepreneur in Rwanda, will not have to be a tech entrepreneur. It could be someone who has optimized their farming. And we have different organizations here. We have successful companies like Nyirangarama. I don't know him personally, but I passed his neighborhood many times and stopped for bruschetta. But it's built a successful ecosystem around that area. So we need to build enough entrepreneurs, not just in tech, in whatever respective areas we are in. And most people will always drive from their own experience and their own things that they know very well. So how do we bridge Norrsken? How do we bridge Kigali? How do we bridge you and I to join Habimana somewhere to make sure? So how do we share enough information? Smartphones might be further out, but even just being able to have access, just telephones alone, roads. So those things that we can do, then clean what I think with those infrastructures in place, people will do the rest for themselves. I have a lot of faith in humanity, because I think once you give people enough access, they're going to come up. You've given Sunny a platform. He has given you a very good, influential podcast. He's sharing all the knowledge that he has. He has created a platform where he can disperse as much knowledge from Davis, who is in tech, to other people who are in other different areas, technology, entrepreneurship, agriculture, healthcare, all those things. So if you give people the best, I think they'll find ways of building on this.
And with that, thank you so much, Davis.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much.
And I'll be watching Huza.
Yes.
Right? Now you're on the $10 million and above. Now I'm waiting for you guys to hit $50 million.
Thank you. From your mouth to God's ears, and the rest of us, we will do the best we can. We are a growing company. We are very, very young. We are not where we would love to be. But it's a journey that I have enjoyed, both good and bad. and I'm lucky to have a lovely wife who can put up with all my hours and all these things that I do. I have two amazing children, and I have a fantastic team. So whatever you do, it's always, you can never do it by yourself. That's the simple reality. Is even here where we have a fantastic team that has just made this happen. So at Huza, we've created an amazing HR technology, and we are doing workplace banking. We are making sure that people who work 8 to 5 get paid at the end of the month. First of all, they should be rewarded for their work by their employers understanding how those who are doing their job and those who are slacking. So from the employer perspective, we are allowing them to understand your workforce. From the employer perspective, we are allowing them to also be recognized for their good work. Because when you get a good talent, you want to hold on to them, right? And then on the workplace banking aspect of things, every time you have to wait for paycheck. So we've now made it easier that if you're working, you should access your money anytime you need it. You don't need to wait for the last day of the month to get a paycheck. Kids are going to school, started school this week. If you want to get your money, access your salary, then pay us back when you get paid. So we are trying to make it easier for people, and that's where the technology comes in. But it's an uphill battle because we are introducing new technologies in the market. Most our business owners in Rwanda, our business owners in Africa are not familiar with softwares as a service to improve their efficiency. They are mostly used to building their thing. They've really built things from their hands. But we are getting there. We have clients in almost 11 countries, I think, in Africa. Rwanda is still our headquarters and our biggest market, but we want to see how do we make this available across.
It's going to be exciting to watch that and watch you grow and back to what we were talking about. Hopefully, the technology that you guys are cooking will improve our lives and not send us back into the Stone Age.
Yeah, that's so hopeful. But you can cook, and people decide what they do with the food. So once you do, but I think our world of technology, the world that you've really spoken about, you and I have spoken about in length, is an exciting world if we use it correctly.
No, amen to that. Amen to that, brother. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I loved it very much.
You enjoyed it?
Thank you. Yes, I did.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on today's conversation. So drop a comment below and join the discussion. You can also join us on the social media of your choice. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend and invite them to the conversation. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.